All right. Happy Monday night. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you had a good weekend. Excited for another week. Maybe some price action. Looks like it's promising. Had an awesome weekend. We went up to Lake Tahoe. Our Carbon 2 group in the Mastermind got together. A lot of really talented business owners and professionals in that group. Went up there to Lake Tahoe, had like a family get together, which was really nice. Kiddos, brought my kiddo, got to play, got to go out on the lake and ride jet skis and paddle boats and do a bunch of fun stuff. So I really enjoyed that. It's the first time we've done that with that group. So look forward to continuing to do different things like that for different levels in the Mastermind. But yeah, just another benefit of being part of that community. So super excited for all the things to come there. In tonight's episode, or Q&A, or whatever you want to call it, we're going to run it down in the chat like we always do. You guys are more than welcome to ask anything and everything that pertains to digital assets, setting yourself up for success, leaving a legacy, generational planning, estate planning, mitigating taxes, generating yield, any of the things that we provide. Obviously, happy to answer questions about. Still just hanging on the edge of our seat, waiting for Japan and the reverse carry trade over there to unwind. We haven't had, well, we've had some movement. So the yen has appreciated against the US dollar back to where it was when we saw the big crash, back on like early August. I think it was like the 4th or 5th, somewhere in there. We had a big downturn in the Nikkei, and then the next day we had a big drop in the stock market. I don't know if that's going to happen again in that same exact manner. I think they bought some time, and a lot of the people that would have had the problems on the reverse carry trade, maybe have had some time to get out here over the last month. If people were smart, they would have taken the opportunity. So anyway, we'll see what the large scale impacts of that is when it unwinds. I do think we're going to get some type of credit event. Michael Gade over there on Twitter, if you guys don't follow him, I would highly suggest doing so. Very sharp guy, talks about a lot of the things we talk about here. He doesn't quite have the knock-on effects like I've talked about, where we have problems in the stock market with unrealized losses. We did get a deal for BlackRock today that was interesting. Apparently they're not trading their BTC through normal means, and they've also borrowed against it. So I don't know how much leverage they have against the Bitcoin, but potentially there's some exposure there. I'd have to find the tweet. We had it today in the Mastermind in our digital asset discussion. But potentially some even further risk and exposure for BlackRock when it comes to their Bitcoin holdings in the spot ETF. Just, stack risk on risk. What could go wrong? It's fine. Can't go down. Bitcoin can't go down, right? So it should be okay. We'll see what ends up shaking out. Anyway, go ahead and hop into the chat here. We got a couple people watching. Appreciate you guys joining us on a Monday night. And again, questions are more than welcome up here in the chat. So first one to kick it off, we got CS2424 asks, hey Jake, do you think the ultimate goal of Ripple is to capture the derivatives market? Yes. Yeah, I would say that it is. I think that's definitely on their roadmap. I think Codius is involved there. I think Codius is alive and well. If you go to the website, it says expect dragons, that it's in beta. And I think you need XRP as a tier 1 asset in the banking system before that's actually going to be realized. I think that's probably post 2025. Maybe it's 2025. We'll see how fast things escalate here. But they definitely need a way to be able to quantify risk in the derivatives market and see exposure for investment banks and other parties that are holding derivatives. They don't currently have an accounting mechanism that does that. And so, I think Codius was made for that reason. And I do think that XRP probably ends up being a tier 1 asset in the banking system that allows them to reduce the potential risk that's associated with tier one assets. So right now, this is how I explain derivatives to people. I don't know if I've ever done this on a live. I think I've done it a few times, but this is my explanation for people that may not understand what a derivative is. So a derivative is a representation of an underlying asset, right? So as an example, like if you tokenized real estate using an SPV, so a special purpose vehicle, there's a company that owns the underlying asset. You might trade the shares, which are securities, of the company that owns the underlying asset. So the underlying asset isn't tokenized. The company shares are. That's a derivative, but that's more liquid, right? So you can swap those easily. There's regulation around that. So it's the representation of something else that makes something more liquid or fungible. The way I talk about the derivatives market for the investment banks, so they use treasuries as the collateral. They have to have the underlying collateral to, make the bet that they are. So they borrow the treasury from somebody else. It's not even theirs. They just use the same treasury that they already used as their collateral for whatever derivatives they have. So let's say you're in Vegas. Okay, it's the Super Bowl. You and your buddies are there, or your girls, however, whatever it is. And you see two people in front of you, and they have a bet on the game. And it's not even on. This is how crazy the derivatives betting gets. It's not even on the whole game. It's on this specific play. And, they think that it's fourth down and they're going to go for it. Okay. So instead of kick the field goal, they're going to say that they're going to go for it and they've got a bet on that. And they're betting, $1,000. And you bet your buddy next to you that the guy on the left is going to punch the guy on the right when he loses the bet on the game. And on your bet, you borrowed 100 from your other buddy that you put down for this bet and 10x leverage it to do $1,000 bet with your buddy. Okay. That's how the banks bet in the derivatives market. And that's the level of exposure and risk that's involved with a lot of stuff that they do. They package up other debt and things like they did with the housing market that are on shaky ground, and they sell those off to somebody else. Just a lot of chicanery that's done there. But yeah, I think that the long-term goal of Ripple potentially is to capture the derivatives market and the quadrillions of dollars of value that move in that environment. And again, it would be a way for banks to actually quantify the risk that they have on those bets. So, and the broader market, which would be great. Avatar 13 says, "Hey Jake, Ripple has a lot of partnerships like the IMF, the BIS, the ECB, the BI. He put the BIS twice, BOA, and a lot of other big banks and institutions. Why the price of XRP is still so low? Why are people so blind to see the potential?" Great question. If you didn't want people to realize what was going on or draw attention, you would keep price low for an extended period of time. You would make it look unattractive. You would, hold price down to trial it and make sure that things were going to work, and you would hold it at a level that provided enough liquidity, but not so much that it attracted attention. You wouldn't have large volatile swings in the price because you're sending transactions over the network, and you don't want the value of what you're sending to be different on the other side of that transaction when it lands. There's a lot of reasons that the price action for XRP has been the way that it's been, and there is a lot of potential. I think a lot of those partnerships that you just mentioned will be brought forth when we do see price appreciation of XRP, and I think that'll be used to continue to funnel money into XRP as broader institutions and enterprises and banks and governments pile in and buy up what is left on exchanges, which isn't that much. There's somewhere around $500 million to maybe 1.5 billion left on exchanges that could be purchased, maybe even less. than that at this point. So there's really not a whole lot left for anybody to purchase that has any meaningful amount of money. I mean, it's 50 cents. If you had $1 billion, you could buy 2 billion of them. If you can find the liquidity, if you could source it, that's the other deal. And I don't think Uphold would execute that large of a trade, or that they would even be able to. If it came to them with, even if it came with 50 million, I don't know if they would be able to source it all. Maybe they would. Maybe 50 million. 100 million, 9 digits, probably be stretching it. So anyway, it's not meant for retail either. I don't know how else to say it. Otherwise, there'd be a lot more supply focused on retail. It's meant for institutional and enterprise adoption to scale payments, large scale payments, and back end settlement for large markets at scale. That's what it's been the whole time. That's what it's been trialed for. And you'll see the price when they need it. I think they'll funnel liquidity into it to be able to provide liquidity to whatever environments are illiquid when we have the credit crisis, and it'll be there to save the day. But until that's actually needed, it's just going to sit where it's been, which is frustrating for a lot of people that have been holding it. But I think people will be well rewarded on the other side of whatever catalyst takes place. Let's see here. He also says, is Ripple from a tech standpoint ready if the dominoes start falling this year? Is XRP ready to handle the derivatives market? When utility does kick in, XRP is easily 3 digits. Why people are sleeping? I don't think Ripple's ready. I think it's somebody else that's ready. I think the XRPL is not ready. You need digital identity. You need oracles, you need smart contracts, you need a lot of other components that don't currently exist on the mainnet. I think those will come. I think Ripple has pivoted on their stance for smart contracts for a reason. You need smart contracts or light smart contracts like hooks to be able to facilitate what governments and institutions want for CBDCs. And until those are on the mainnet, it's going to be difficult for those to actually be scaled. Now, you might have other parties that have technology or a blockchain that has all those capabilities that settles using XRP that doesn't have a native asset. That's who I think is ready. So derivatives market, like I said before, I think comes a bit later on. I think that's really there may be another crisis later on where they need an even higher price XRP to be able to settle derivatives. And again, I think it gets a tier 1 asset designation before that actually happens. Or maybe that's why it becomes a tier 1 asset. We'll just have to see. Let's see here. Great questions, by the way. Martian says, setting up an RLUSD account requires a total of 12 XRP. So who will use RLUSD if the price of XRP goes to $100? The initial cost of setting up an RLUSD account is $1,200. How do you see that, Jake? I don't think it's for retail. Like I said before, Ripple is not retail facing. They don't sell retail any solutions. They're not dealing with us. They don't care. I'll tell you this. They don't care about our clients, XRP. When I approached them about partnering with them to be able to produce yield for our clients, their immediate response was, why do we need y'all's XRP? Ripple does not care about retail. If a few people get rich off of, them being successful with their business model, awesome. But they're the solutions and everything that they're building are for enterprises, for institutions, and for governments to settle large value payments, not for the average retail investor. If you want somebody that's catering toward the retail investor, go to XLM. Hyperledger, Fabric, merchant services, look at Velo, look at Stronghold. look at stuff that's being built on that network. That's consumer and retail facing, lower value payments, micro payments. Yeah, if you're looking for the big boys, XRP. And to your point, yeah, if XRP goes to a higher price than that, it's gonna be pretty steep just to open a wallet address on the network to be able to transact. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that one. Matt says, what yield can you get with your XRP that is totally safe from losing any XRP? Saying thanks. There's never going to be any way that you can earn a yield with any asset that's completely 100% safe from losing it. I'll just say that. Like, there might be a circumstance in the future where you can delegate an asset. So if you had delegated proof of stake, it's pretty safe. If you have to open up a trust line with another party on the XRPL and you trust them, it's pretty safe. There's never anything where you earn yield on something that doesn't have some type of risk. That's what you're getting paid for, is the risk that you're taking. So if it's a low return, normally pretty safe, normally safe bet, Treasuries, right? You're risking that the US is going to default. They can print the money to cover it, so they're not going to, right? They haven't yet. They have defaulted twice in history. The US has defaulted twice on their debts. So it has happened. It's a very low risk. And that's why you earn 5% or 6%. Holding, it's not even 6% now. It's down 10 years down to like 3.5%, 3.8%. 2 years still closer to 5%. So there's just transparently, there's not ever going to be anything that's completely safe, that has zero risk if you're earning a yield. Now, can you mitigate the loss, potential for loss? Yeah, absolutely. We work with clients to hedge to make sure that, you're going to make some money to be able to cover all the costs of making the money, plus some, right? And we do that with covered calls and puts on our clients' accounts. But there's still risk associated with that. And we generate somewhere between 5 to 8% per year. It's still not risk-free. There is risk associated with it, but it's very low risk. Now, you could choose to be a little higher risk and probably earn a little bit higher return. Not completely recommended, but we can do it. But again, there's just a higher chance of loss if that occurs. So be aware of that. Anytime you're earning yield, anytime you're earning returns, you can also buy insurance, right? So if you're buying options in the other direction to cover your loss in case you're wrong, it still costs you a little bit extra money. You might make a little bit less, but you are covered on the downside, right? And so that's kind of our thesis: is we pick a direction for the market. We buy the other side just to make sure in case we're wrong, we're covered there also. And we're able to generate a yield in doing that. Liquidity pools, when those come online, AMMs obviously are not, impermanent loss exists in those pools. As new markets come online and liquidity is provided to environments that don't currently have liquidity, those will be opportunities for sure. If you're in a pool early, you're going to have to wait till it's at critical mass to be able to, de-risk yourself from the initial investment on those liquidity pools or those AMMs. At scale, I think is somewhere around 50 million in liquidity in a AMM or liquidity pool. So if you're in early, there's potential for a lot of upside, but you're also going to have to wait. You're going to have a longer time horizon until that liquidity pool or AMM matures to be able to de-risk or take back your initial investment and continue to draw from it over time without causing significant loss to everybody else in the pool. So those are all things that we're working on also. Still haven't felt comfortable doing any of that. We're waiting until pseudo accounts are available as an amendment and have been passed on the XRPL. And at that point, we feel that will be able to mitigate the risk of impermanent loss a lot better for our clients. So when I talked to David at Consensus and asked him about those things, that was back in May, and he said, maybe a year from now, those things would be passed and available. So looking at Q2 next year, before those amendments are up for vote. is a likely scenario. I talked to Vet about those things, who runs a validator on the network. His thesis was the same. It's going to be 6 to 8 months probably before those things are available for people. So anyway, those are all things that we're looking at. We want to integrate those into institutional custody, which we hold our clients' assets in with Digital Wealth Partners, which is a SEC registered IA or investment advisory group. We have RIAs that are licensed, 65, that provide financial advice underneath that firm. You guys might know Mikkel. He works with us. Great asset to the team. Glad to have him with us. He's one of our advisors. And so obviously very extremely knowledgeable on XRP, and will continue to, build his knowledge and work with us in that capacity to offer those products as they come available. So anyway, I rambled on like I normally do, but hopefully that answered your question. Atlantic Living, glad to see you. There are platforms depicting XRP as trash and poo-poo emoji, because XRP dumps 500 million tokens on retail every month. Price can never go up with its horrific tokenomic structure. Can you help with this argument? So they're right. Under current constraints and circumstances, that's true. I don't really try to argue that argument. So the few things that I would say to that, you need a way to continue to expand the supply to be able to hold price stability after we reduce the appreciation. But the appreciation isn't going to come from retail or speculation on exchanges. It's going to come from adoption and institutional use to settle payments. And the volume across the network and the payment volume for SWIFT or the FX market or commodities or the back end of the stock market or derivatives, all of those things are what is going to cause price appreciation for XRP. It's not even assets being issued on the network. It's the transactions between people happening on the network that go through XRP to settle. And so until that happens, they're right. It's going to continue to just be a stable, low price, almost stable coin. It's going to continue to range in the region that it has. Retail speculation is not going to drive price up. It's going to require institutional adoption, likely, BlackRock and an ETF to funnel liquidity into it, adoption in Japan to settle, between banks, all those things. So normally when people bring that up, I just nod along and say, yes, you're right. And then they're befuddled. They don't know how to react to that because they expect me to defend against that. And it's true. There's a treasury. They hold price stability, and that will continue to be the function of that treasury, even on the other side of price appreciation. You need a way to increase supply as demand increases to hold price stability. They've already minted all the XRP that's ever going to exist. Okay, so you need a repository of some XRP to be able to have a monetary control on the asset, and you need a fiduciary, which is what Ripple has been up to this point, to do that. Does that responsibility shift to somebody else on the other side of price appreciation? Very likely, in my opinion, it will. But until then, and the escrow is going to continue. It continues till 2027. And if there's still more, which I think there will be, I think they'll need even less and less of the XRP that's released in the escrow each time to hold price stability at scale. And so that treasury and the rolling of that asset in perpetuity, probably for the next 100 years, to be able to augment price and hold price stability on the network, it makes a lot of sense to me. It's a function that you need if you wanted an asset to be able to settle transactions and not be extremely volatile. So that's my argument against it. It's function over sexy, right? People want, skyrocket, volatility, all those things. XRP is not that, except for very short periods of time where it goes directly straight beeline up and then levels off. We saw that in 2017, then it came up and went back down, and now it's trended sideways for 7 years. And I think, probably really close to another one of those vertical candles. Hopefully, right? I've got to address this one. We talked about this in the Mastermind not too long ago too. So Chris came out and endorsed Kamala. He has supported Biden financially in the past. Is this a strategic play or a nothing burger? It's for sure a strategic play. Okay, so Ripple, they have Pride Month every year. You see them change their logo. They're from San Francisco, California. You got to play both sides of the fence. They also lobbied on the Republican side. They donated $25 million there, right? So Chris doing that allows Brad, to not have to pick or endorse anybody. Not to say that he won't, but David is also very liberal in his comments on YouTube. I don't agree with everything they say or what they do, right? I don't care. Just because I don't agree with somebody's personal opinion doesn't mean it's the opinion of the entire company, and it doesn't mean that their tech isn't fantastic and they don't have the partnerships and they haven't got the adoption and they aren't going to be successful. Some people fighting for, well, I shouldn't say that. Holding grudges over principles will cause you to lose money. Just like, and sometimes it's worth making the point. I'll say that. Sometimes it's worth making the point. Let's say you're in a lawsuit and the other person is obviously wrong, but it's going to cost you $250,000 just to prove them wrong over 2 years. And the only people that are going to win are the lawyers. Is it worth it? Sometimes it's worth it. Depends on how strong those principles are, right? But you're going to lose money. It's not going to be a profitable venture. Okay. Just because you don't agree with somebody's personal opinion on something doesn't mean that the underlying technology or the company itself isn't going to be super lucrative and wildly successful. So if people want to get bent out of shape about that, you're more than welcome. Again, if that's your principle and that's where you stand on things and you don't think that, a potential Fortune 100 company isn't going to play both sides of the fence when it comes to politics because they don't know who's going to end up in office, you're wrong. If you're the CEO of that company, you're either not picking sides or you're going to pick both sides. And that seems to me what Ripple's done. They just pick both sides so that they're strategically aligned and whoever gets in there, they're going to be okay either way. So it's my 2 cents for what it's worth. CS 2424 says, if 75K is the top for Bitcoin, what does that mean for alts? Which alts? I guess would be my question. I think the next bull run that you see for digital assets will be utility driven. And the cycles that have persisted over the last 15 years, this is the end of a super cycle, and that will be reset. And a lot of the constraints that have existed over the last 15 years are about to change significantly. We've already seen that in this cycle. We haven't seen expansion in broader markets. Bitcoin is stalled out here. It's back to the 50-day moving average, which has never happened. And then it gone on to reach a new all-time high. That's never happened before. The only other times it's touched the 50-day moving average is when it's headed below it into a bear market. So we'll see. I could be wrong. If we got expansion in the markets, there's the dominance, the Bitcoin dominance chart looks like it's about to break down. So I think it's time for alt season. I don't think it's just going to be all the alts like it has in the past. I think it's going to be specific alts that are going to soak up a ton of liquidity all at once. Mainly XRP. But, XLM, XDC, HBAR, Algorand, IOTA, AI. We haven't seen the AI bubble yet. We had DeFi, we had NFTs, we had some other ones, right? We haven't seen the AI one yet. We did see the gaming one. We saw Gala and a bunch of those other ones run up. I think AI is interesting in blockchain, the merger that's just happened there. But I think there's going to be specific pockets of crypto and specific assets in particular that see utility and a ton of liquidity flow into them. And I think the rest of the market is going to get rocked when regulations roll through. And that's what I think we're on the precipice of. Big G. He says, hey, Jake, how likely do you think an SEC appeal is? Some sources say it's likely, which would induce XRP to fall another 10 to 20 cents. Thoughts? Could this also be manipulated to fleece retail? Again, I'm going to say it. They do not care about retail. There's not enough people holding XRP or liquidity there for them to care. If they did dump the price one more time, it would be so institutions could buy it up cheap. And so if that's what you're talking about, fleecing retail, then sure, yeah. I don't see that happening. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I see volatility in the near future, and there could be a down before an up, or an up and then a down. I don't know. 10 to 20 cents back down to the 30s. If you didn't buy enough over the last 4 years, I don't know what to tell you. While the lawsuit was ongoing and everything else, that's a long time to be able to accumulate stuff. So, could it be manipulated fleece retail? Sure. Could it fall? Sure. I am extremely confident that there won't be an appeal. Yeah, I don't see why they would at this point. Obviously, Ripple's already put them in a position where they are going to be hard pressed to get the money in this fiscal year. Their fiscal year ends at the end of this month in September. I think September 31st or 30th is the end of their fiscal year. So just like every government agency, and the escrow expires past that. So they're not going to get it. And that could cause some, I don't know if the SEC has the money to fight it, an appeal, if they start one, because they're out of funds. And Congress has also restricted them. So anyway, I don't anticipate it. Congress is out of session after this month also for the full month of October. So unless they have an emergency meeting, which they obviously could if there was precedent for that. But I don't see the SEC appealing in my personal opinion. Sure. Yeah, I mean, you could see a potential speculative bull run for XRP. I think they're going to continue to hold price stability as long as they need to. I don't think this bull run is going to be speculatively driven. I'm very confident that it'll be utility driven. Great questions, by the way. You guys are awesome. If you do like what's going on, I always forget to say this, but like, subscribe, share with somebody if you think this is good stuff. And we do appreciate you being here on a Monday night, hanging out with me, and asking, like I said, great questions. Gail says she's going night. Thank you for showing up, Gail. Let's see here. Cornell says, what's your opinion about Raoul Pal? I really like Raoul Pal. He has negative views on XRP, not gaining significant traction for some time because of institutional adoption, and is met by Ripple's monthly escrow release. Yeah, that's what I was just talking about. Raoul's a smart guy. I like his community. I like what he's building. I think that he has a little bit of the like crypto freedom rah type thing going on, and that's his audience. He's got a lot of people on Solana and Ethereum and a lot of the other networks that have seen some adoption from speculation, right? And people building NFTs and artwork, and not to say those things don't have value, but they don't have the same value as institutional adoption for payments at scale. So I think he's got a bag. That he does. And look, this is the other thing I'll say. people that are in financial markets will talk their book. Okay. I'm transparent. I'll just tell you where I'm at. I'm not going to poo-poo anything, and try to like FUD you out of it so I can buy it cheaper. Jamie Dimon, Jim Cramer, all these guys that have a huge audience, if they're FUDing something, might be a good time to buy it. Tend to talk their book. So, not saying Raul's doing that. He may legitimately think that XRP is not a good investment, and he may not own any. I don't think that's the case, though. I think he's got a fat bag, and he's hoping that if he talks a little bit about it, maybe the price will dip. But we'll see. Maybe he'll come out and say he was wrong on the other side of price appreciation. Singapore Fire. Appreciate you hopping on here. Some will find themselves traveling to locations outside the U.S. Absolutely. Singapore, Dubai. Is there a site that tracks Ripple's anything, activity, seminars, meetups, etc.? I'm sure that there is. I think it's an XRP community site, or maybe the developers that are doing that. So Apex. I know that XRP headquarters is run by Trey or Lloyd. I'd be good for him to have on there if he doesn't already have that. I think that there'll continue to be meetups and seminars and events. I won't be attending those. We may have a presence there, but it's not something I plan on attending. If you do come into a large amount of wealth from your digital assets, and you aren't there to make business connections and meet people, or benefit from synergistic relationships with people, be low key. Just stay low key. Make sure that if you are going to go to things like that you have like-minded people that are there, that are in similar circumstance to you. Don't overly expose yourself to situations where things could go awry. All things to consider on the other side of price appreciation. Singapore and Dubai are both great jurisdictions. Dubai is probably the safest place that I've ever been to in my life. So would highly recommend Singapore. I wouldn't say it's the safest place in the world, but it's awesome. So it's on my bucket list of places to go travel to. But I will be attending lots of events. We'll be hosting a lot of events, but they will be exclusive, invite only. Let's see here. Mr. X, he says, last week you gave me a great answer that we can roll over our IRAs. Can I custody it for loans also? No. Unfortunately, Mr. X, IRAs are qualified capital. And they are subject to stringent regulations, and you're not able to borrow against an IRA. However, always a but. If you did want to borrow against it, you would use it to earn yield, and the yield would be put into a side account, which could also be invested alongside the rest of the IRA. But you could borrow against that side account, just not the original contribution. So that is something that we're working on and developing. It does not currently exist for crypto because nobody else generates yield on IRAs. We do have the capability, and we're looking to be able to roll out that solution to people here within the next 30 days or so. Let's see here. I thought it was Alfred. Chadwick, how are you, sir? Hey, all right. Thank you for gifting some memberships there, Chadwick. Appreciate you. Oh, interesting. Sammy, you say September 17th. We'll see. We have a pretty significant event that we're putting on September 19th. So it would be great. I'd love to see some fireworks before then. Martin, he says, hey, Jake, how you been? I've been great, brother. Appreciate you being here and asking good questions. He says, I want to ask you how the institutional custody returns are paid. Is it in dollars or in XRP? Thanks for everything. I think we can do both, to be honest with you. On the covered calls and puts, I think we can take in-kind distributions. Let me verify that. I'll have to talk to Hashnote, which is who we're working with, to see how those are paid. Worst case scenario, it's in dollars. I would love it if it was in kind, right? Just personally, I would rather continue to earn assets that I think are going to appreciate substantially over time. So, yeah, I think that hopefully it's XRP, but I don't know for sure. So I should know that, but we're still working through everything with them. We have the tri-party agreement on the docket. So when I have an answer, I will definitely put it out to you. Scott Taylor says, thank you for the quality YouTube live. Absolutely, brother. Do you think created XRP and why? Oh, who do you think created BTC? Geez. And why? Do you think there is more government hand in it than Maxis would ever believe? Yeah. I think that, I think this is a much larger narrative. I'm just going to go ahead and give you all my tinfoil hat because I like these type of questions. I think Bitcoin was an incentive for people to build out large amounts of compute all across the globe. And that when that network is no longer needed, they will just use a quantum computer to mine the rest of the Bitcoin. And a AI will use the infrastructure that's been built out and incentivized to be built out by the Bitcoin network. Tinfoil hat, like I said, take it with a grain of salt. I don't know everything, but that makes a lot of sense to me. If you wanted to create that amount of compute across the globe, that's what you would do. So I think that there's governments and some really big players behind the creation of BTC and XRP. XRP was the second digital asset ever created. June 2nd, 2012 was when it was X and S when they originally minted the 100 billion XRP that exists today, and then they got turned into Ripples, and now they're XRP, or the exchange rate peg, if you want to list it that as the acronym. So anyway, yeah, I think that there's a huge government involvement and other entities that have a significant stake in both. Sammy says people are saying the carry trade isn't done just yet. I would agree. Definitely not. Brandon, how are you, sir? He says, Jake, thanks for you do. If I have a certain amount of cash that I want to remain liquid, but I don't necessarily trust keeping it in a bank, do you think putting it in a stable coin is a good option? USDC or Paxos. And this is coming from MasterCard and other large institutions that I've talked to. They seem to think that those are regulated and safe and shored up. So, but I don't think banks are going anywhere, especially large banks. I could be wrong. I say that all the time. I've been wrong before. But Bank of America, I know a lot of people are scared there. I'm not overly concerned about Bank of America. JP Morgan Chase, not overly concerned there. They have a huge position in silver that I think they could shore things up with if they needed to. And I think they both own enough XRP that they'll be okay. So anyway, I'm not overly concerned about a large bank. Now, if you're in some podunk little credit union in your town that isn't connected to FedNow and any of the new systems, it could be problematic, right? And FDIC definitely doesn't have enough money to cover it if banks were to become insolvent again. We saw them dump the majority of what they had on those regional banks that failed last year. So I don't think that they've recouped enough to be able to cover if we saw a systemic loss, multiple banks go under with risk where it's at. So yeah, stable coins I don't think is a bad option. It would depend on where you held them, right? So if you're holding them at Coinbase, might not hold them there. If you're holding them with us, you're good. All of our accounts are bankruptcy remote, segregated, not commingled, have no exposure to us or the party that we work with. They are yours, and they sit in your vault, and they wouldn't be earning interest there, but they would be safe. So up to you, brother. But those are my thoughts. Let's see here. Angus, he says, if you start an LLC and are married, is that considered a single owner, or a married couple, or a partnership? Sorry for the newbie question. It's a good question. So it's still just a single member. It's going to be you, but you have spousal rights in like almost all states. So your spouse would inherit that LLC or the ownership in it if you were to pass. You can list them as a minority equity owner in it through a partnership, or an equal equity owner in it through a partnership. You can list it as a family limited partnership. And you actually get a net benefit there, potentially. Depends on how you see the word benefit. So when you die, if you did a family limited partnership and you were the one that contributed the assets, the family members that were still in the LLC that would take ownership of the assets would get a step up in basis. So the assets would now be, their basis would be the new price post death for you. I don't really consider that a benefit, because then they can liquidate the assets with no capital gains, which sounds awesome. But if you don't want them to sell the assets, then that's a problem, right? So you can really incentivize people to hold on to the assets long term if they are going to be saddled with long-term capital gains, or large capital gains if they sell the assets. And so, single member LLCs that are taxed as an S corp, you don't get the step up in basis. You have a fixed basis, and that actually would incentivize people after your death not to liquidate the assets inside that LLC, because they would be saddled with a lot of capital gains. So depends on how you want to structure it. Those are all options. Most of our clients just do single member, and they know that their spouse has rights to the equity in that through spousal laws in their state or jurisdiction. But you can always add your spouse to the LLC. So completely up to you. But it would be a partnership, a limited partnership, if you added your spouse, or a multi-member LLC, however you want to say it. Laura, what's going on, Ryan? How are you? Do you think Japanese yen falling has anything to do with Ripple coming out with their RLUSD sooner than we expected? The yen is appreciating against the dollar. So it's down from 160 per dollar to 142 per dollar. So it's actually gone up in value against the dollar. But not really. I don't think that RLUSD has anything to do with the yen. I think the yen is going up in value against the dollar because the Bank of Japan raised interest rates. And they will probably continue to do so. Their economic growth numbers came back this morning, and they were outpacing what the estimates were. And so they'll continue to raise rates. That's the way that it would go. So the U.S. will either lower rates, which would, again, cause the yen to appreciate against the dollar, or Japan continue to hike rates, which will also raise the yen's value against the dollar. And that's the dynamic at play. RLUSD, I don't think, is impacting that. It's a good question, though. Let's see here. Wild Bill. I like your name. He says, hi, Jake. If the SEC appeals, which I don't think that they will, what exactly would they be appealing? Can they appeal XRP as not a security ruling? No. They're past the statute of limitation to be able to go back and appeal that. They would be appealing the judge's ruling that was issued back in July. So we got 25 days left until the 60-day period is over. And I think we're already out of the woods. That's just my opinion, though. Serious question. This is good, Luke. How will BTC maxis cope, especially Michael Saylor, when their precious old tech token doesn't go to $1 million plus because no one really uses it like XRP? I hope it does. I hope it goes to $1 million plus. I hope that all those people don't lose that much money. I hope I'm not right. I hope this isn't a cycle reset. I don't want to be right. I don't want 75 to be the top, even though that is what I think. So if you do any research on Michael Saylor, you will find that he was the biggest loser of the .com era in the fund that he ran back then. I think Michael Saylor is, I don't want to say a patsy. That's probably not the right word. A figurehead. That he makes a bunch of money, and MicroStrategy does things other than just acquire Bitcoin, just so you know. Like, that company's big deal. They just use the funds that they made off Bitcoin and that fund to create cash flow and do other things with it, which are profitable and useful. So but he could definitely be the biggest loser of this go round also. And people will go, oh, how could I have not known that? How could I have not seen that coming? I don't know. All you had to do was a little research. I did see Jack Mahler talk to Peter Schiff earlier today, and he was extremely eloquent and articulate in the way that he positioned Bitcoin against gold. And I bought it, man. I was like, man, he's on it. And I would say that there is something to do with the network effect. I don't think that it will end up being Bitcoin and proof of work because it's not scalable without XRP. You need to be able to wrap Bitcoin on the XRPL for it to go to the values that a lot of these people want it to. And that might be what ends up happening, to be honest with you. Under the constraints that currently exist, I don't ever see Bitcoin getting to $1 million plus. But if you could wrap BTC on the XRPL, and there's a limited value or limited total of tokens, right? Supply and demand, and it does become quote unquote digital gold in some capacity. There's only ever going to be 21 million, unless, David Schwartz did talk about a bug in the code that he found in 2013. That could have exposed Bitcoin to, a change in the supply. But he says he thinks it's been fixed. So if it was found out that somebody can mint more Bitcoin, it goes to zero tomorrow. That's the whole value proposition behind it at this point. So I don't know what they're going to use it for. Like I said earlier, I think that eventually it's going to be removed from the network, and the infrastructure that's been built out to support that will be rehypothecated for other uses. Just my thoughts on it. So they will be upset is the answer to your question. Grown men will cry if and when Bitcoin drops back down below 20,000. Bill says, how and where do I open an account? If you want to work with Digital Wealth Partners or Digital Ascension Group, you just have to go to digitalwealthpartners.net, and you can, schedule a consult there. There are some qualifications in order to be able to work with us. So there are two that I will mention. You need to have an LLC or a trust or some entity, a business, a corporation, something that owns the digital assets aside from your personal name. We do not manage capital for individuals or assets for individuals. And the other piece of that is they need to be worth at least $100,000 in current value. And that can be across all the assets. They do have to be assets that we can hold in qualified custody. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, no, not XLM yet, sorry. Matic, Solana, Chainlink, pretty much any DeFi protocol that you could possibly think of that's been built on Ethereum. We have access to that. Aave Compound, Farm Yield, lots of those. Lots of fund managers like those because they do produce returns and they're able to pass those to people as dividends, which I get, and so that's where a lot of the focus has been put as far as institutional custodians go, because that's where the liquidity and the money is. So, but yeah, as long as you're holding quant, we can do quant also. So as long as you have at least 100,000 in value across all of those assets that you're going to hold with us, and they're held in an entity, an LLC, or trust, meet both those qualifications, we are happy to work with you. Let's see here. Theo says, how would one put their parents on payroll if you're looking to retire your parents? What does that process look like? Well, they do have to do something for your business. So they can't just be on payroll. Okay. The IRS comes knocking. They have to have a legitimate reason for being employed. You can pay them whatever you want, as long as they are doing something within the business. So, if mom does some of the accounting, maybe she enters the payroll every month. Maybe she's reviewing investments with you. Same thing for your dad, right? Like, there needs to be some, they can be on the board, they can be a director, they can be an advisor. As long as you're keeping board minutes, and keeping track of some things in your corporation to make sure that, again, if the IRS comes knocking, you have something to prove that they are working for the company, then that's all it takes. And you put them on payroll. It's not overly complicated. They just need to be doing something for the corporation that warrants some type of money that you are paying them. So just as an advisory role, if you wanted to put them in that position and consult them on a monthly or quarterly basis for their advice, that warrants a salary, and you could pay them. They're going to be subject to income tax on that W-2. So if you wanted to give them distributions or gifts, that would be another way to do it. If you wanted to invest in their corporation for some equity over there to pass them some capital that way, or if you wanted to loan them some money, neither one of those ways are taxable. So if you want to buy something from them for a ridiculous amount of money, it's up to you, as long as you got the receipt. There's lots of ways that you can take care of people in legal ways that don't cause them a bunch of taxes. So those are all things that we look at when we're working with people. So happy to work with you on that topic if it makes sense. DFIN, do you think Ripple is connected to all companies and institutions that are connected to Interledger Protocol? Do I think Ripple is connected? No, I don't think that Ripple is connected to all the companies and institutions that are connected to Interledger Protocol. I think that there are multiple corporations that could be working with those companies. Interledger Protocol allows for interoperability between all these networks. The XRPL, plays a big role in that. But yeah, I don't think it's Ripple in particular that's connected to all of them. I think that there are a few other parties, Stellar, R3. There's other players that they could be working with to provide solutions. I think Ripple will be a giant, but I don't think that they will be the end all be all. Infinitely Curious. It's a good name for the question. What are your thoughts on the U.S. government making XRP illegal to hold, much like they did with gold in the 70s? Odds of that occurring? They can't confiscate it from you. You lost your ledger and your keys in a boating accident. All of our accounts require that you have a signature on it to be able to send the assets. They can't take them. They could blacklist you and your wallet address. That'd be the most aggressive thing that they could do, but they can't freeze it. They can't claw it back. They can't take it from you. It's agnostic, right? There's an X in front of it. That means there's no country or corporation that controls the asset or issues it. So the answer to your question is there's 0 odds of that occurring. Now, they could propose a buyback, like Jimmy Valley asked, and well, not asked, but is protecting us for. They could propose that, right? And then you'd be significantly incentivized to turn it over to them. The circumstance under which that happens, it has to become extremely scarce. And price would be already extremely high, I think, before they might offer that. And I think that they will offer people a lot of solutions to be able to benefit as retail. I mean, we're working on these, right? So liquidity pools, AMMs, providing liquidity is what you're supposed to do with this asset. That's what it's made for. So if you're participating in the ecosystem and you're helping other people and you're providing liquidity, why would they take it from you? You are doing exactly what you're supposed to with it, and you're earning a healthy yield for doing so. So I don't see that circumstance occurring. I could be way wrong, right? And if they do, again, that's again what Jimmy Valley basically put together that synopsis for price, so that we would at least get a fair price if they did, come after it in that capacity. But I don't believe that's going to happen. Again, they don't care about retail. Like, there would have to be extreme scarcity of the asset. There's 100 billion of them. Retail might hold 1 billion, maybe 1.2 billion total for all of retail. That's 1% of the supply. It's minuscule. So, Becky, how are you, ma'am? She says, "Hey Jake, numerous reports over the past several months saying central banks buying gold. What about our central bank, the Federal Reserve? Are they buying it too?" Yes, is the answer. And I don't think we have the gold that everybody thinks we have, but we have plenty of gold. So not overly concerned about it. I believe we have at least as much as China or more. Probably actually a lot more than China. But, yes is the answer to your question. We are about an hour in. We'll hang out for another 30 minutes here, and then we'll close it out for the night. Thank you guys for all the questions. Again, like it says at the top here, please like, subscribe, share the stream if you think it's valuable, and continue to ask great questions here in the chat. We've got, I normally like to go all the way to the bottom here when I get to this point in the evening, and then work my way back up. Alfredo, thank you for the super chat. He says, "Hola! Will Anchorage also be able to yield on HBAR? If so, what percentage among others like XRP? Thanks, my man." We are pushing Anchorage to integrate HBAR and provide custody for that asset. There's another RIA that's come to them with a pretty big chunk of HBAR. They have a fund that owns some HBAR. And so I do think that they will likely end up being custodians of that here in Q4. At least that's what we're pushing for. And worst case scenario, we'll be able to do covered calls and puts on it like we do with XRP. Best case scenario, we'll have some way to stake it and earn a yield. So whatever those are paying, probably somewhere between 5 and 8% would be a likely yield. Thank you for the question. Thank you, J King, for the super chat. They say, thoughts on Casper, not Caspa, Casper. Will it benefit from utility? I think so. I think Casper's a sleeper. I think a lot of people just don't know about that token. They provide public and private utility on that network. There's only a few networks that allow for that. And I think that for business applications and enterprise use case, I think they have a lot of, potential utility for that network. I'll say this. and I talked about Kevin Cage last time on the stream, but he called Casper a long time ago and hasn't done well since he's called it. But I think it's going to see its day in the sun. I do think there's going to be pretty significant utility on the network at some point. I think it may be a little bit later than some of the other payment networks. Same thing with like ADA and Cardano, right? Like, I think Charles has something there. I just don't know where it fits. And that's kind of the same thing for Casper. I like the public and private use of it. I just, again, they haven't found like a home for that niche where it totally makes sense. But I do think it'll do well. Just, it's going to take a little bit of time to figure out what lane it needs to be in. I agree. Justice K says it would be amazing to see a utility-driven market. It would completely change the dynamic of the entire market. We won't know what that looks like until the other side of it. And that's the other reason I'm positioned where I am. I'm sold and, like, I don't want to say completely certain on XRP. I mean, I am, but otherwise I wouldn't hold my entire net worth there. Anyway, so I don't know what the rest of the market's going to look like on the other side of price appreciation for that asset. But there could be lots of opportunities. And so we will be looking for them for sure. Frank, how are you, sir? He says, hi from Australia. Hey, appreciate you being on here. First of all, thank you. Thank you. Question I have, what wallet do you recommend and what other information can you give on keeping your assets safe? I mean, obviously we offer institutional custody that's insured, held at a qualified custodian, bankruptcy remote, all the fun stuff there. So if you have over 100,000 in digital assets in the assets that we work with, biased, right? Take it with a grain of salt. That's what I would recommend. If you are not your keys, not your crypto, which you still own the keys in our situation too, but in that situation, you could hold it on Decent is normally what I recommend. I like their user interface. I think we have a link on our videos for them. So if you want to go check that out, that would be my recommendation for cold wallet. Ledger seems sketchy at this point. I've tried them all. Decent's my favorite. So if it's for XRP, you might use Tangem also with the X-Man wallet or Zum. I don't know what We'd say is calling it now. But that's another application that I also feel is safe. Fire Marshal Bill says I'm going to need a haircut soon. I've had 2 haircuts, Fire Marshal Bill, since I got my hair done. But the hairline is starting to come in a lot thicker. Excited to see how it eventually turns out. Still, you know, I'm through the ugly duckling phase, I think. But yeah, it's still a little sparse. So hopefully it grows in as thick as the rest of my hair. When do we get that done? June. So we're about 3 months in. It's supposed to be like 6 months when it's pretty full and bushy, and then a full year is when you get to see the full results. So thank you for noticing and the kind words, sir. Let's see here. Scroll on down to the bottom and then work our way back up like we usually do toward the end here. Up the super chat, Miss Sanchez. Appreciate you, ma'am. She says, to who would you recommend your services? Can you do a quick rundown of what your services are versus Beyond Broke? Do your prices go up after liquidity event? Yes, to the bottom question. So I always try to provide every level. Can't always do that, but in our circumstance we can. So the Mastermind, you know, if people want a community of people that have a like mind and incentives and aligned is the word I'm looking for. It's late. I'm sorry. I'm tongue-tied. Aligned incentives and other like-minded individuals, a good culture, a group that they can lean on the other side of price appreciation and up until price appreciation, you know, to make you feel like you're not crazy. And if you want to be proactive, you know, we got a lot of people in there that are a few steps ahead. Just setting up their LLC in institutional custody, have trusts and things put together. Do have significant allocations to digital assets also. So that's really what that community is for. It's to educate people and help them make sure that they're being intelligent about how they're working through their way through this situation and this point in their life, and have other people that they can lean on during that process. And then separate of that, we do run private investments in that community. So if people are looking to get access to private equity, we have deals there that I can talk about inside the group that I can't talk about out here, because we do involve non-accredited investors, because we do have a pre-existing business relationship with them, and they do qualify as sophisticated because of the resources we provide in the mastermind group there. So anyway, that's that side, the mastermind, Beyond Broke, like you mentioned. And then on the other side, we have the family office and the RIA. So the family office, we do a lot of proactive work, right? So people that have somewhere between $500,000 to $5 million invested in digital assets, and they believe that it's going to appreciate substantially during the next bull run, we do work with them to provide a limited scope of resources and things on a ad hoc as needed basis, not a full scope of services. We do have 9 clients that are north of 20 million that we provide, I don't want to say a full scope of services for. A lot of them are also advisory, just kind of ad hoc. But we do have partnerships to be able to provide a full scope for anybody that's looking for that. So the estate planning, CPAs, accountants, wealth management, philanthropic interest, private security, concierge service, private jet and yacht brokers, real estate brokers, asset management, lifestyle management, accounting, payroll, all that stuff, you name it. We have partners and in-house people that can facilitate those things. And then, so that's kind of 20 million or above. I think a lot of people that are watching this and, have been proactive are going to be in that upper echelon, ultra high net worth individuals very soon when we do see some price appreciation on some of these assets. And we've tried to make sure that we have a scalable solution in place to cater to all those people and provide you a high level of service on the other side of that. So that's really kind of where it's at on the wealth advisory side. We have Digital Wealth Partners, which is a registered SEC registered RIA. And maybe, all the fees are listed on the site there, if that's, a question you might have. Trustee services, estate planning services, again, CPA. We want to be a one-stop shop is really what we're looking to do. So if you make a bunch of money in crypto, we want to be able to provide anything and everything that you might need. And that's what we've worked the past 2.5 years to be able to put together. So hopefully that answers your question. And thank you. I don't get to, pitch it all the time. I try not to be honest with you. I like to just come on here and answer questions for people. But inevitably, a lot of the things that I've created selfishly do come up, and I am proud of them. And so excited to be able to share those with people to help them now and in the future. Fire Marshal Bill. For y'all that weren't here a couple weeks ago, we did have a nice lady named Karen that, she was a little bit offended that I felt like I was shilling my services. And so again, I'm trying to kind of back off that a little bit. I don't want people to feel like I hate high pressure sales. I hate like used car salesmen. I never want to come off that way for people. And so if I ever do, and she felt that way, right? So she's justified. I don't want to come off that way to people. And so I do want people to tell me if I'm ever coming off that way. So it was actually appreciated. Let's see here. Scrolling on up. Peaky Blinders. Thank you for the hairline. Gonna need a lineup soon. Yeah. Gonna have to get it. It's coming in good. I'm excited about how it's turned out. For you guys that don't know, I did get, I went to Turkey a few months back and got the hairline done. I was looking, you kind of see it like it was coming way up in here, receding. And I'm happy with it so far. So if you guys want to go check out Estemark Clinic in Turkey, obviously they do a pretty good job I'm sure that they would love to hear from you. Oh, she asked the same question twice. I'm sorry, Miss Sanchez. I missed it the first time, but I do appreciate the super chat. Let's see here. Crooklyn says, you're not concerned about despite Buffett dumping tons of stock. No. I am not concerned about B of A. He still owns a pretty significant allocation to that. I think Buffett has moved into the position that he is so that he can provide liquidity during a credit crisis. He's always like the lender of last resort. When the regional banks failed on that weekend, there was a ton of regional banks that flew into, guess where? Omaha, Nebraska, to see Uncle Warren. Okay. Now he just happens to own interest in a whole bunch of regional banks alongside Bank of America. He's got $288 billion in treasuries and cash equivalents right now. I don't think he's waiting on a crash. I think he's waiting on like the U.S. government's just tapped him. They tapped him a long time ago, and they said, "Hey, look, we're going to use you in this capacity. You're going to make a ton of money, and you're really smart. And you've been able to get to this point. We're going to help you out, but you got to help us out when we need it." And that's been the relationship that they've had. He stepped in 2008. I think he'll do it again here. I think they anticipate a huge liquidity crisis, and Buffett's sat, over there on the sideline, ready to deploy that capital in that situation when it transpires. And I think they needed him to reach a certain threshold, and so he had to liquidate his positions. I don't think it's anything aside from that. I think B of A is well positioned to make sure that they're good to go on the other side of it. STO says about BTC, imagine if all the blocks and hash that are generated are out mines reach, and it's actually the source code for super artificial intelligence. We just don't know till the last block is mined. I'm telling you, I'm sound crazy, and that's okay. I tinfoil hat. That's fine. Take it with a grain of salt, but I really do. Like, why else would you build out that infrastructure? Why would you incentivize people to build out that infrastructure if it wasn't to support some type of gigantic decentralized AI network all over the planet? Because it's not for BTC's network. It's not scalable. Like they messed that up when they didn't increase the block size. That was on purpose too. So when it forked for Bitcoin Cash, but anyway, I'm with you, STO. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they shut it down and turn it into that. I don't know. But that infrastructure, it's the same. Like, oh man, I just saw myself. I looked crazy. It's the same electrical equipment and components that are used. Like I know a guy that sells to both the AI side and Bitcoin. It's the same equipment. So anyway, just some thoughts for you guys. Let's see here. Scott says, so I don't see it as you shilling. I appreciate that. Yours is high level service to people who protect what they have, and probably people who are new to significant money amounts. Yeah. Well, and that's the hope here, Scott, is if you didn't come from money and you don't have access to all these professionals, I hope you do. I hope people have spent the last 4 years surrounding themselves with all the people that they're going to need post price appreciation, having conversations, learning the skill set, traits, and beliefs that they're going to need on the other side of this to maintain their wealth long term. But inevitably, there's going to be a bunch of that haven't. And that's not their fault. I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of people that are just like, hey, it's going to go to $5 or $10. I'm going to sell some. I'm going to make some money, and I'm going to pay my house off, right? And I've got enough to retire, and I just want to live a nice, quiet life, and I don't need all this extravagant stuff. And that's really kind of the majority of the people that I deal with. They are not gluttonous. They want a comfortable life. They want to take care of the people around them, and they want anything extra. They just want to give back. They have very large hearts, and they have certain passions or philanthropic ventures that they want to appropriate the capital to. Anything that's beyond their means or their needs, that's where it's going. And so I will say that that's a commonality of almost everybody that I've met with over the past 2.5 years here, just on calls, having conversations with great people. There's been maybe one or two in that time frame that were the Moon Lambo people, and we've met with probably, I don't know, 800 or 900 people at this point, which blows my mind. That was not what I set out to do. At least I'd never thought it would get this big, which is awesome. 2.5 years ago, I just started getting on calls to help people and hopefully get them thinking about this stuff. So anyway, yeah, we work with people and that have come into a large amount of money that maybe have never dealt with it before. Want to make sure that we're educating people so that they're thinking through things correctly and they're not going to get taken advantage of, which will happen, unfortunately, on the other side of this. A lot of people are going to be lottery winners, and they're going to sell, and they're going to be hit with huge tax implications. They're not going to know how to manage that money. They're going to burn through it. Family members are going to come out of the woodwork and ask for it, and they're going to give them money. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'll just say that, like, helping people around you, there's nothing wrong with that, especially if they're in need. But you need, I don't want to say qualifiers because that's not the right word, but you want to give to people that are going to use it wisely. And sometimes that comes with constraints, right? And so here's an example. In the structures that we set up with people, you're going to have a financial committee that could be our RA, it could be another RA, it could be other investment bankers and a group of people that you have appointed to those positions to manage the capital for your family, okay? And then you're going to have a family board that sits separate of the management of the money. Family board's over here. And the family board will vet deals outside the scope of your investment thesis and say yes or no. The financial committee is who your wealth managers are. And you might sit on that as the matriarch or patriarch of the family because you did make the money and you know how you made it. And you might have a specific expertise in a certain vertical in finance, digital assets, right? And so with that, let's say a family member does come to you. They say, hey, I got this business. I want you to throw me some money. Would you invest $1 million? You say, absolutely. I would love to. Please send me all of these documents. You're going to ask for pitch deck, financials, projections. You're going to ask for their board of advisors, the agreement, the safe note, or the stock purchase agreement, however they're going to be raising the capital. Maybe it's a debt deal. And I'm going to give that to my financial committee, and they'll review it. And as long as it meets the specifications for the investment thesis that we have for how they allocate capital, then they'll make the allocation. And if they don't meet those specifications, then they're not going to be mad at you, right? Because you got a system, you have a procedure, you have a process. You didn't tell them no. It was the people that you put in charge to make sure that you don't make poor decisions, right? So that's how you kind of keep some of the animosity that it would occur if you did just flat out tell people no. And it's not wrong to flat out tell people no either, especially if you told them about the opportunity and they told you were silly and passed it. You gave them the chance, right? Anyway, to each their own, but that's just one of the ways that we can help you mitigate that potential issue that might arise in your family and make sure that you're not making poor decisions allocating the capital post price appreciation. Let's see here. Where are we at? We got 5 minutes, and then we're going to wrap it up for tonight. Peaky Blinders is going back and forth with Becky here in the comments. Man, thank you for staying up. It is late there in the UK, or early, however you want to look at it. Appreciate you being on here, Kyle. Let's see here. Peaky, it's good to see you, brother. You have been and gone for a little bit, so it's good to see you back here on the lives. Let's see. He's also asked, Jake, from your perspective, I think anyone who's in crypto and has the goal of making significant money would be wise to know about your services such as yours. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think we are on the cutting edge here. I mean, I know we are because I'm having to build products that don't exist. And it's not just me, it's our wonderful team that is working at DWP and Digital Family Office. I could not have better people around me building all the services and things that we're doing. So there are no other wealth managers that have anywhere near the amount of clients that have signed on with us in the period that we've been open. I think the closest would be like maybe 15 clients. We have over 100 that have signed up with us, which is just breathtaking. I'm super blessed. So, but with that comes a lot of challenges because the infrastructure for this stuff is just now being created. And we're right at the forefront of it. We're working on all the solutions to be able to earn yield in institutional custody, be able to borrow against your assets in institutional custody, to be able to create all the things that exist in traditional financial management over here specific for crypto and digital assets. And yeah, it's super cool. It's frustrating at times, just because there's so little adoption and the people that are on the forefront are underfunded. And so they take a little bit longer to do things, and understandably so. So anyway, thank you for pointing that out, and I appreciate everybody's support here that does come and ask questions and has signed up with Digital Wealth Partners. Zach's going live shortly. You guys should go check that out. He's good people. Let's see here. Joe, this is a really good question. After price appreciation, we're looking to expand globally. So we have partners, affiliates in other jurisdictions that do provide, one-off services that we do provide here in the U.S. Caleb and Brown, talked to them not too long ago. They are an institutional custodian there in Australia. They do have a fund that they manage and run. They have Firebox as their infrastructure. They don't currently work with people to hold their digital assets and manage the assets. They just provide brokerage service and the fund. There's really no in between. So there's something there that we might have a discussion with them about. We do work with John Basilos over there in Australia to set up family trust and other things there. Dubai is another jurisdiction that we're starting to expand into with partnerships. We have the broader EU covered. The UK, Canada, we have strategic partnerships there. Mexico, we have somebody that does estate planning there. The Caymans, Bermuda, that area, Cook Islands, New Zealand. There's a lot of people that are looking for this service, and really I haven't found anybody else globally that's even attempting to do what we're doing, which is surprising to me. But especially since there's clarity in other jurisdictions, I haven't figured out why that is. I don't know if they don't think there's enough demand, or if people wouldn't want it, or if I'm just the only loudmouth out here on Twitter and YouTube talking about it. Anyway, yeah, super blessed, and we definitely will be expanding to other jurisdictions. It'll probably be later next year before we have institutional custody and all the other services that we're providing. But we can do that for international people here with our services now. So as long as you have an entity that's holding your digital assets, we can work with you to custody your assets here domestic in the U.S. Using Anchorage and provide those services, right? We do that internationally now for clients as well. And we do have some from Australia. So happy to work with you in that capacity if it's something you're interested in. Taylor says, hey, Jake, when investing money for friends and family, self-custody, how should we consider the future tax burden when we eventually hand the assets over to loved ones, have an LLC? I would just set them. I mean, they can. How do they know it's not in their name now? Gift it now, right? You file a 709 form now and gift it to them previous to price appreciation, so that you don't have to worry about that side of things, or involve them in your trust as beneficiaries on the other side of it. And you can do it as a family limited partnership and roll all the assets into one entity. There's a lot of different ways that you could do it. If you wanted them separate of you, you might segregate it out across LLCs that they are the managing member of and have the interest and ownership of. Anyway, yeah, any of those solutions would work and would prevent potential tax implications. Great question, though. I'm sure other people are thinking it. Jeffrey says, what percentage of what you do can Greenhouse law do for Canadians? Probably 2/5. And not everything. So we work with partners like Aaron for everything that we do. Unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, this space is very fragmented. It's very new. Most people that consult in this space and do know what they're doing, they can charge premium. And to bring those people in-house costs a lot of money. Believe me, I know. So post-price appreciation, I might be able to get Aaron on payroll. But for now, he's an independent consultant that we contract with. And he provides his scope of services specific to Canadians. But he doesn't do the wealth management, right? He doesn't do philanthropic. He doesn't do private security. He doesn't do the accounting. He's not a CPA, but he is a tax attorney and deals with business law there in Canada. And so he can do the estate planning side of things. And he does that very effectively for Canadian citizens or those that are dual citizens of the US and Canada. So I would say 2/5, the tax component and also the estate planning component, he does extremely well. As far as the accounting and the wealth management and the philanthropic interests, not so much. So we're still happy to fill that gap, right? So if you work with Aaron, you can still work with us in those other regards. It's not like one person has to be your end all be all. We're happy to fill the gaps where we're needed. So that's what Digital Ascension Group does. And then the last one for the evening, Becky, you're the winner. She says, do you think there will be a gold revaluation in the near future? Seems like the only way out of the debt problem. Crypto would surely play a huge role, especially XRP. It could get revalued. And the reason it would be revalued, and I don't think it would be as significant as a lot of people are talking about. I think all these countries do hold an allocation to gold, but I think they hold an allocation to XRP also. And just by using the XRP to transact at scale will move the price. They don't have to revalue it. And that'll adjust the value on their balance sheet and offset debts. So, I think you could see some type of gold revaluation, but really the Fed could move the value of gold on their balance sheet just up to the current value of gold. It's at $42.22 on the Fed's balance sheet was the last time they assessed that asset. So, and we do have a bunch of gold. All the countries do at this point. I think gold is fairly priced. I know people don't like that. I think it's so. Just as an example, 10 kilos of gold in the 19 teens bought a nice house. 10 kilos of gold today, which equates to about $77,000, buys a nice house today, around $700,000 or $800,000 home. That's a fair value, in my opinion. If you look at it priced against the Dow or real estate or other assets, it's right in the middle. It's a fair value. So I don't think that they're going to reprice gold anywhere near the prices that a lot of people are talking about. It might get a bump. Maybe you see $5,000 gold. But I really don't see it getting repriced. I think that they will use XRP and other digital assets to offset the debts, and they will do that by just using them, and they won't have to reprice them. So that's just my opinion. There's lots of people that are smarter than me out there that talk about commodities. I listen to all of them. Andy Schechtman, Peter Schiff, Mike Maloney, all brilliant people. Okay. This is just one man's opinion. So it's not gospel, but that's what I think is going to happen. I think that and silver, I think, is underpriced for sure. But if it was a whole lot higher, then your phone or other products would be much more expensive also. So kind of a give and take there. Anyway, I'll answer this one because it's interesting. Angus has asked thoughts on front runner to provide Oracle on XRP. Excuse me. FTSO, Flare Time Series Oracle, got to be number one. Chainlink for sure. IOTA, those three, I think will be the main oracles on the XRPL, and FTSO in particular. I think the main thing that they wanted to accomplish with Flare over the past 3 years was the time series oracle and creating an incentive for people to provide good financial data through an oracle, and I think that they nailed that process. So that's the one I think will be most likely used. So anyway, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me on a Monday night. As always, you can reach out. You can join the mastermind at beyondbroke.com. Mastermind.beyondbroke.com. Community there is great. And I've mentioned this the last couple times on lives. If you're still with me, you can get a free month there if you want to use the code BeyondBroke, all caps, 1MO at the end, like 1 month. Check it out. See if you like it. If you don't like it, cancel. Nothing wrong with that. Excited about that. And prices, to Becky or the previous lady's point or question earlier, prices will be going up substantially on the other side of price appreciation. We want to protect the people in that community, and that is one way to do it. So if you want to get in now for free, try it out. I think we're going to potentially see price appreciation maybe before the end of the year. And you'll be locked in at those prices. So that's a benefit. If you do want to schedule a time with myself or our advisors, you can go to digitalfamilyoffice.io, or if you're interested in institutional custody and wealth management, you want to go check out digitalwealthpartners.net. So hope you guys have a wonderful week. We will be back on Wednesday night if you guys want to check it out again. Until then, I hope you'll have a wonderful evening, a wonderful week, and we will see y'all on the next one.